Hello, my dear students. A very warm welcome to all of you in Shri Jayendra Rank Zone. I am your friend and mentor for the subject Business Economics. In this lecture, we'll begin with Economics Chapter 5, that is Business Cycles. All the concepts will be covered in the coming series of lectures. So let us begin. This is lecture number 1, Business Cycles. Let us see the learning outcomes of this chapter. After studying this unit, you will be able to understand and explain the meaning of business cycles, describe the different phases of business cycles, the features of business cycles, explain the general causes behind these cycles. What are the reasons behind these business cycles? Elucidate the relevance of business cycles in business decision making. That means in business decision making, how the business cycles are crucial. What is the significance of business cycles in business decision making? In business decision making, I believe you understood. Let us quickly see the overview of the chapter. So we are going to learn the meaning of business cycles, the phases of business cycle, expansion phase, peak phase, contraction phase, and through phase. The features of business cycles, the causes of business cycles, internal causes, war, post-war, technology shocks, natural factors, and population growth. External factors, fluctuations in effective demand, fluctuations in investment, variation in government spending, macroeconomic policies, money supply, and psychological factors. Relevance in the business decision making is also a part of business cycles. So basically these are the 5 major topics that will form this chapter, this unit. Let us continue. Let me introduce the topic to you. Consider the following situation. During 1920, UK saw rapid growth in gross domestic product, production levels, and standard of living. The growth was fueled by the new technologies and production processes such as assembly line. The economic growth also caused an unprecedented rise in the stock market values. China's recent economic slowdown and financial mayhem have fostering a cycle of decline and panic across the world, as countries of nearly every continent see escalating risk of prolonged slumps, political disruptions, and financial losses. I believe you know the meaning of slump. Slump is the lowest part of recession. Slump is the lowest level of recession. I believe you understood. Let us continue. What are these? So these are examples of business cycles. The first example shows that the UK economy was going through boom situation during 1920, while the second example of the recent slowdown in China indicates the beginning of a recessionary phase. We have already seen in chapter 1 that economics is concerned with fluctuations of economic activities. What are economic activities? And economic activity is a process that based on inputs based on inputs leads to the manufacture of goods leads to the manufacture of goods or or the provision of a service. So, economics is concerned with the fluctuations in the economic activities. The economic history of nearly all countries point towards the fact that they have gone through fluctuations in the economic activities. Fluctuations in the economic activities. That means what? That there have been periods of prosperity alternating with the periods of economic downturns. These rhythmic fluctuations in aggregate economic activity that an economy experiences over a period of time are called business cycles or trade cycles. Let us continue. A trade cycle is composed of periods of goods trade characterized by rising prices and low unemployment percentage, altering with the periods of bad trade characterized by the falling prices and high unemployment percentage. In other words, business cycles refers to alternate expansion and contraction of overall business activity as manifested in fluctuations in measure of aggregate economic activity gross national product such as gross national product and employment and income. A noteworthy characteristics of these economic fluctuations is that they are recurrent and occur periodically. That is, they occur again and again, but not always on a regular interval. So they are very irregular in nature, nor are they of the same length. It has been observed that some business cycles have been very, very long lasting and for several years, while the other have been short ending in 2 to 3 years. Okay. So just take some note. Fluctuations in fluctuations in aggregate economic activity that an economy experiences over a period of time, that is period of prosperity period of prosperity alternating with the period of economic economic downturns downturns are called business cycles. Are called business cycles. Business cycles refers to alternate expansion and contraction of overall business activity as reflected in fluctuations in measure of aggregate economic activity like gross national product, employment and income. Let us continue. A trade cycle is composed of periods of good trade characterized by rising prices and low unemployment levels. Altering with periods of bad trade characterized by falling prices and high unemployment levels. Understood? Let's go to the next topic. Phases of business cycles. We have seen above that business cycles or the periodic booms and slumps in economic activities reflect the upward or downward movement in economic variables. A typical business cycles have four distinct phases. First, expansion. It is also called boom or upswing. Expansion, it is also called boom or upswing. Peak or boom or prosperity. Contraction, also called downswing or recession. Fourth is through or depression. So you can say expansion, peak, contraction, depression. The four phases of business cycle are shown in figure 1. We'll just see. The broken line marked trend represent the steady growth line or the growth of economy when there is no business cycles. The figure starts with through when the overall economic activities, that is the production and the employment, are at the lowest level. As production and employment expand, the economy revives and it moves into the expansion path. However, since expansion cannot go on indefinitely, after reaching the peak, the economy starts contracting. The contraction of downtime continues till it reaches the lowest turning point, that is through. However, after remaining at a point of some time, the economy revives again and new cycle starts. Getting it? Let us continue. Just see over here. X-axis, origin, y-axis. On y-axis, we are denoting real GDP. On x-axis, we are denoting time. So over here we can say that this part is expansion. This top is known as peak. Its coming down is contraction. This lowest part is through. Over here same. Then again over here expansion, peak, contraction, then again expansion. So during the lifetime of a company, generally the situation like this generally comes. So this is business cycle. This is business cycle. This is trend line in between. Trend line. I believe you understood till here. Just write a note over here. Note, trend line indicated in this diagram represents the steady growth line, or the growth of or the growth of the economy, when there are no business cycles. When there are no business cycles. Understood? This is figure 1. This is figure 1. Okay, so let's learn about these phases of business cycle. The first phase is known as expansion phase. Expansion phase. The expansion phase is characterized by increase in the national output, that is increase in the GDP, gross domestic product, increase in employment, increase in aggregate demand, increase in capital, increase in the consumer expenditure, sales, profits, rising stock prices, and bank credits. The state continues till is full employment of resources and production is at its maximum possible level using the available productive resources. Involuntary unemployment is almost zero. So this is one of the crucial point that involuntary employment level should be zero, and whatever employment is there is either frictional employment, that is due to the change of jobs, or suspended work due to strikes or due to the imperfect mobility of labor, or structural unemployment, that is unemployment caused due to the structural changes in the economy. So prices and cost also tend to rise faster. Good amount of net investment occurs and the demand for all the types of goods and services rises. There is altogether increasing prosperity and people enjoy high standard of living in case of expansion due to the high levels of consumer income and consumer spending. Business confidence, production level, and factor incomes, profits, and investment is high. The growth rate eventually slows down and reaches its peak. The growth rate eventually slows down and reaches its peak. Just do the notings. Just do the notings. This phase is characterized by increase in economic activity, increase in economic activity, increase in national output, increase in national output, etc. Next is this phase, this phase, this phase continues till there is full employment, till there is full employment of resources, full employment of resources, and and production and production at production is at the maximum. Production is at its maximum possible level, maximum possible level, using using the available using the available productive resources, using the available productive resources. Next point, please write. involuntary unemployment is almost zero, is almost zero. Only frictional unemployment, only frictional unemployment or structural unemployment frictional or structural unemployment exists. The details you already understood. Let us move ahead. Next point, prices and cost. Prices and costs tend to rise faster. Net investment also occurs at a faster pace at a faster pace. Next, demand for all types of goods and services rises and services rises. Next point, there is increasing prosperity and people enjoy high standard of living. People enjoy high standard of living. While due to due to high levels of due to high levels of consumer spending due to high levels of consumer spending, business confidence, high level of consumer spending, business confidence, production, factor income, profits, and investment, and investment. Next point, the growth rate eventually the growth rate eventually slows down the growth rate eventually slows down and reaches its peak reaches its peak. Understood? I believe you understood. The first point, that is expansion. Now let's continue with the second point, and that is peak. Let us begin with the second point, and that is peak. The term peak refers to the top or the highest point of the business cycle. So the top point or the highest point of the business cycle is known as peak. In the later stages of expansion, inputs are difficult to find as they are short of their demand, and therefore input prices rises. As you all know, as per the law of demand, if so, you know, as per the law of supply, if some product is shortage in supply, the price is going to rise. Output prices are also rising rapidly, leading to increased cost of living and the greater strain or fixed income earners. More pressure on fixed income earner because the cost of living is continuously rising. Consumers begin to review their consumption expenditure on housing, durable goods, etc. Actual demand stagnates. This is the end of expansion, and it occurs when income growth has reached a point where it will stabilize for a short period of time and then move in the reverse direction. I believe you understood till here. Let us continue. Take some notings in relation to peak. The term peak refers to the top or the highest point of what? Of business cycle. Highest point of business cycle. Next, in the later stages of expansion, in the later stages of expansion, inputs are inputs are in the later stages of expansion, inputs are difficult to obtain. Inputs are difficult to obtain as their availability as their availability is less than as their availability is less than requirement less than requirement and therefore input price rises. Input price rises. Output price rise rapidly. Output price rise rapidly, leading to increased cost leading to increased cost of living. The causes this causes this causes greater strain on what? On fixed income earners. Next, consumers consumers begin to review consumers begin to review their their consumption expenditure their consumption expenditure on what? On housing, on housing, durable goods, etc. Durable goods, etc. Next, actual demand, actual demand, thus stagnates. This marks this marks the end of expansion stage. The end of expansion stage. The end of expansion stage. Peak occurs. Peak occurs when peak occurs when economic growth economic growth has reached a point where it will stabilize, for what? For short time. Stabilize for short time, and then move in the reverse direction. Move in the reverse direction. Move in the reverse direction. I believe you understood the peak point. Let us continue with contraction. Let us continue with the contraction. So phases of business cycle, the third phase is contraction. In the phases of business cycle, the economy cannot continue to grow endlessly. As mentioned above, once peak is reached, increase in demand is halted and starts decreasing in certain sectors. During contraction, there is a fall in the levels of investment and employment. During contraction, there is a fall in the levels of investment and employment. Producers do not instantly recognize the pulse of the economy and continue anticipating higher levels of demand. They feel that in future the demand will improve, therefore maintain their existing levels of investment, more inventory and more production. The consequence the consequence is a discrepancy or mismatch between the demand and supply in the market, because the supply is more in the market as compared to demand, the price of the product will fall. Supply far exceeds demand. Initially, this happens only in few sectors and at a slow pace, but rapidly spreads to all over all sectors. Producers, being aware of the fact that they have indulged in excessive investment and overproduction, respond to holding back future investments, cancellation and stoppage of orders for equipments and all types of inputs including labor. This in turn generates a chain of reactions in the input markets, and producers of capital goods and raw materials in turn respond by cancelling and curtailing their orders. So this is the effect of it that leads to contraction. This is the turning point and the beginning of recession. the contraction or the recession starts over here. I believe you understood. I believe you understood till here. Let us continue. Decrease in input demand puts inputs price down, and income of wages and interest earners gradually decline, resulting in decreased demand for goods and services. Producers lowers their prices in order to dispose their inventories in order to stock clearance. Producers decrease the prices. Producers decrease the prices. Decrease the prices to clear the stocks, to clear the inventories or stocks. Understood? So producers lower their prices in order to dispose of their inventories and for meetings of financial obligations. Consumers in turn expect further decrease in the prices and postpone their purchases. They feel that the price level in the market will fall a lot, will fall more. So with reduced consumer spending, aggregate demand falls in the market. Aggregate demand falls in the market and generally causing to fall in the prices. The discrepancy over here is between demand and supply gets widened further. There is a more gap between the demand and supply happened. This process gathers speed and recession becomes severe. Recession becomes severe. Investments starts declining in the market. New investments are not coming. The production level fallen down. There would be an unemployment level in the market. So employment decline, resulting in further decline in the income of the consumer, income of the normal countrymen, decrease in demand, decrease in the consumption of both capital goods as well as the consumer goods. But business firms become pessimistic about the future state of the economy, and there is a fall in the profit expectation, which includes them to reduce investment. Bank credit shrinks as borrowings for investment declines, and investor confidence is at the lowest over here because stock prices falls and employment increases despite fall in the wage rates. The process of the process of recession is complete over here, and the severe contraction in the economic activities pushes the economy into the phases of depression. Into the phases of depression. I believe it is clear till here. I believe it is clear. Let us take some notings about contraction. Contraction arises. Contraction arises since the economy cannot continue to grow. Since the economy since the economy cannot continue to grow endlessly. Next point, once peak level is reached, once peak level is reached, increase in demand halted. There is no further increase in demand, and the demand starts decreasing. The demand starts decreasing in certain sectors. In certain sectors. There is fall in the levels of investment, fall in the levels of investment, and fall in the level of employment. There is a fall in the level of investment and fall in the level of employment. The next point is producers do not immediately recognize producers do not immediately recognize the pulse of the economy and continue anticipating continue anticipating higher levels of demand higher levels of demand and so maintaining the existing level of investment the existing levels of investment and inventory and inventory. They continue to increase their production continue to increase their production thinking that thinking that market will recover recover shortly or in a short period of time. There is a large gap between the levels of demand between the levels of demand and supply in the market and supply in the market and this large gap needs to be covered, but certainly this could not be an easy task. Initially the demand and supply gap demand and supply gap is seen in few sectors only in few sectors only, but 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 in a slow pace in a slow pace this issue spread to all the sectors to all the sectors and no sector no sector remains unaffected no sector remains unaffected So what happens after facing such a problem? The producers understood, or the producer generally come to know that okay, fine, we have already invested so much, we are holding so much of inventory, we are putting a lot of production, we are doing overproductions. So they will keep on, the holding stock back for the future investment plan. So they will cancel all the future investment plan. They will stop the orders for equipments, and basically they will not include the labor force to for more productions. So this is the next step. Producers, producers, after being aware about their excessive investment, their excessive investment and and higher production levels and higher production levels responds to the market, responds to the market by holding back holding back their future investment plans, their future investment plans. They are not ready, they are not ready to do more production. They will also decrease their inventory levels. They will also decrease their inventory levels. The the producers will cancel out their future orders, their future orders, in order to behave in a very conservative manner, to save. Let us write the next point. Let us write the next point. Such corrective actions, such corrective actions taken by the producers, taken by the producers, taken by the producers generates a chain of reaction, a chain of reactions in input markets, in input markets, and and producers of capital goods and raw materials, capital goods and raw materials, in turn responds responds by by cancelling and curtailing their orders, curtailing their orders. This is the beginning point of recession. This is the beginning point of recession. Next point. Next point. Decrease in input. Decrease in input demand pulls input prices low. Pulls input prices low. Incomes of wages and incomes of wages and interest earner gradually declines, resulting in what? Resulting in fall in the demand fall in the demand of goods and services. Goods and services. Producers will decrease the price decrease the price to clear their unsold inventory, or we can also say it as unsold stock, and to meet their financial obligations. Now consumers will expect that there should be more fall in the or more decrease in the prices. Now consumer expect further decrease in prices and delay their purchases and delay their purchases due to decrease in the consumer expenditure, due to decrease in the consumer expenditure, aggregate demand falls, that leads to decrease in prices that leads to decrease in prices. So the discrepancy between demand and supply gets widened further gets widened further the level of the level of recession becomes severe. The level of recession becomes severe. Investment level in the economy starts declining. Investment level in the economy starts declining. Production starts declining. There is a rise in the unemployment level, in the unemployment level in the economy, unemployment level in the economy. Resulting in decrease in income, decrease in the income level, decrease in the income level, and resulting resulting to decrease decrease in demand and consumption level in the economy, decrease in demand and consumption level in the economy. Next, there is very low demand for capital goods, for capital goods and consumer goods in the market, and consumer goods in the market. There is very low demand in the capital and consumer goods in the market. Business firms becomes pessimistic about their futures, state of the economy, and and there is a fall in profit expectation. So they feel that the profit is not going to happen in the future. Bank credits, bank credit level shrinks and there is a decline there is a decline in the borrowings come loans. Investor confidence is at the lowest. Investor confidence is at the lowest level. inventory prices starts falling, inventory prices starts falling. Next, unemployment increases, unemployment increases, despite fall in wage rates, despite fall in wage rates due to the adverse impact on the factor markets, due to the adverse impacts on the factor markets. So we have covered 3 stages today. In today's class, we have covered 3 stages of business cycle. What we have seen today is the chapter overview. After that, we shifted to the introduction. We had seen certain conditions, certain conditions. An example of the slowdown is China. We have seen, and we have also seen the increase in the level of standard of living. An example of stock market. Then we shifted to the phases of business cycles. So there are 4 business cycle phases. The first is expansion, the second is boom or peak, the third phase is contraction, and the fourth phase is depression. So first phase we have seen in detail, but before that we have seen this the graphical representation. So over here in the first stage it was, over here it is through or depression, then expansion. The topmost level is known as peak. This is the slump, the lowest level in the construction. Contraction, then expansion, peak, then again contraction, then depression, then expansion, then peak, then this would be contraction again, contraction. This dotted line shows the trend. This is also known as the trend line. There is a note we have written over here. That trend line indicates in the diagram represents the steady growth line or the growth of the economy where there are business cycles. We have seen uh, the first phase of business cycle, and that was expansion. We have taken the notings in detail. Then we shifted to the second phase, that is known as basically the peak phase of the business cycle, the most important phase. We have taken the notings in detail, and at last we basically shifted to the third phase, and that is contraction phase. And after completing this, we have taken the notings of contraction stage. One phase is left in this, and that is the fourth phase, that is the depression. We'll continue the fourth phase, but we'll continue in the next class. Thank you.